All right, we are recording. Peace, Dequi. How are you? I don't know.
Mama D, Mama.
Oh shoot, I gotta get back to the meeting. All right, so people are continuing to join, but we're gonna get started. So I'm going to try to move to a location where maybe I'll be able to be better heard. I got a message that my audio's not the best. For this house.
It seems like it's getting worse. It seems like it's getting worse.
That helps. Okay, hopefully now my audio will be better. Y'all let me know. Does it seem like it's working a little better right now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. All right. So as people come in, if there's anyone who could just invite everyone, anyone who comes in, if any more people come in, to just introduce themselves with their name and pronoun, and location, just say hi. That'll be great. But it's 7:12, so I would like to go ahead and get started. So what I want to do today is I want to share with you all the vision for this idea of the revolutionary care space, and how it came about, and then also to provide a tour of the house and invite people who have been to the house to just communicate their experience of it as it relates to this vision, and then for us to kind of talk about what we collectively could imagine as next steps for it. So I'm Yane. I feel like everyone in here knows me. I'm an organizer here in Philadelphia. I organize with people all around the country. And one of the things that began to be a concern, and it really, really stuck with me. So remember, after Eric Garner was murdered and his daughter, took up the mantle to fight for justice. And, and in the midst of all of that, with all the difficulty and all the work that and burden that comes with that kind of organizing, as well as, of course, the stress and distress of, the way her father was murdered, being added to that, she passed. And I constantly would think about, as a result of that, just how hard, like, it's organized and we love it and it's so important to us, but also like it's hard work and it's stressful. And then, being in community with you all and so many other people, and having some close relationships with people, I was knowing about the struggles and the stresses and things that people were going through, and was bringing up the fact that we need to elevate the importance of like taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. And so that was in my mind. And then I was invited to come into this house. This is not a typical space that I would usually be in or be able to be in. Usually, I wouldn't be able to afford a space like this. But there was a family who invited me to take the third floor of the house while they were living here. And so I did. And then they decided to move out, and it was a little fast. I had not lived here very long, and I wasn't just ready to unsettle. And I decided to take over the house and rent out the rooms on the second floor. There are 3 rooms on the second floor. But one of the rooms in particular, particularly after the house cleared out and I really got to look at that room, it just was such a room of like peace and tranquility that I felt like, it just felt like it should be for more folks. It felt like I wanted to share it. And so I decided, instead of renting that room out, to raise funds to cover the cost of that room and to make it what I called a revolutionary care space. And so I was able to raise those funds, and then I wanted to offer it to people in the organizing community to be able to come here and to get arrested from like everyday life and to just be able to come and to relax and to rest, maybe get some writing done, some painting done, do some yoga. And the location of the house is very close to the Wissahickon. So there's that easy ability to enjoy nature. And then also the outdoors of the house itself, the yard and the porch and everything is also very tranquil. And so I did that, and I began to have people using the space, and there are quite a number of people who are on this call who have used the space in that way, have stayed in the house and enjoyed the value of that. And then I also, because of the fact that we're in community this way, we began to host a lot of meetings here in the house and have a number of community meetings, community activities, retreats, and trainings and things like that. And the whole space was becoming a movement space. I also began to invite people to come and have porch meetups. It was COVID, so we couldn't come inside, but we could meet up outside. And then as a collective community, walk into the Wissahickon and make use of nature in that way. And I began to imagine other things that we could do that would just be like, we could love on ourselves, love on each other, and invite the community to do the same, with each other. And so I wanted us to be able to come together and have dinners maybe once a month. And even with the community walks being able to happen regularly, and us being able to come back, kick back, sorry, I'm gonna create a co-host. Gotta get to them in here and make co-host. Okay. Kick back and have cookouts and things like that with the outdoor space and things of that nature. So the way that the vision evolved was that we would be able to, I wanted to create a membership space and like members of the organizing community, not with any cost or anything, except maybe an elective cost, that would be up to us, but would get like a membership card, and then to be able to develop relationships with different retailers and service providers where they would provide discounts, like the same way that they have military discounts, right? Where if you were in the military and you're going off to harm people, that you can get a discount, a 15% discount or something like that, that the organizers, the people who are fighting and putting our lives out in order to help and support people could be getting discounts, and that we could develop relationships with vendors and retailers to do that. And then also, like I've noticed where there was a group that's a rock climbing group that was offering free days to people of color. And I thought it would be great for organizers to get things like that. Maybe there's when organizers and different people will be able to get services that are, or days that are set aside just for them. And so wanted to start to nurture a range of ways that care could begin to be manifesting beyond just having a room, which is not nothing, but, even more could be done. I began to have, when the year rounded out after the first year of the lease, and I'm just kind of trying to give a little history to explain why we're on this meeting right now. When the lease was coming up, the landlord, so in order to get this house, because I don't have any income, and I made up my income with the landlords and they were like, not buying it. So in order to get the house, I had to pay the year up front last year. And because of COVID stuff and all of that, I was able to do that. When the year came around, my expectation, of course, was that I would be paying month to month, but they wanted me to pay the whole year up front again. And now that I'm thinking of the house in this very different way, of like all of this house being a collective space, it clicked for me and occurred to me that I'm actually giving all of these funds to capitalists. I'm taking the funds from our community, and if I go raising funds and everything in order to be able to secure this house for the community, I'm taking our funds and I'm taking them out of our communities and putting them into the hands of capitalists. And I began to have a concern about that. And so a few things happened back and forth. I decided to leave, but quite a number of people expressed that this house was really, a special space, and they thought that I should fight to keep it. And because I built it as a community space, because I built it and invited the community to come and enjoy the space and to have a sense of ownership of the space, and because I wanted to hear and listen to what people were saying, I decided that I wanted to make it a collective decision. So that's really what this meeting is about. One of the things that I wanted to do with this idea of a revolutionary care space from the beginning was to establish it as a model and invite others who may have a room in their house or a guest house or other kind of space to make their homes revolutionary care spaces too, so that we can have spaces for our community all around the city and all around the country. And so I wanted to be able to it's not just about the building. I wanted to also be able to do some programming so people could come and like provide yoga workshops. People could come and have community discussions. So I wanted to host those kinds of things as well and be able to empower people to be learning about things that are related to care, mental health, physical health, nutrition, and all of those things. And those things be able to be a part of this. And I'm building a website that I've actually pretty much built it. I just need some videos that would, and where all of these things would be able to be housed as well. So the question that is on the table at this moment is, do we keep the space for the community and continue to take these funds that we collect and put them into the hands of this capitalist? Or do we close this space? And let me backtrack a little bit. Either way, no matter what I would like for us to be able to do down the line is to secure a space that we own. And that space be able to function in
recording in progress.
As a care space. However, while we are not in a position to do that right now, my question is, do we close this space and build the funds to get a new space? Or do we also use some of our resources to keep this space and at the same time work on getting a space that belongs to us? One last thing I want to say as it relates to just kind of trying to lay out the concept is that I wanted this space in the revolutionary care space as a concept with any spaces and any multiple spaces that we have to function and be developed as a cooperative so that it will be collectively owned by all of us as a community. So I am moving out of this house. I'm moving either way. I'm moving whether we keep the house or whether we don't keep the house. So this is not at all about my living space. This is, I want to expand the spaces. So instead of it being just that one room with the porch, it'll be that room, the adjacent room, and the room that has been my bedroom, which is also a really lovely room. The adjacent room has a fireplace, it's a nice size. My room is a really massive room. So all of these spaces would be part of the care space and people would be able to stay in them. There will be one room that would be a free room for a person who would take care of the house, is my vision. And then there's a room that we can rent out that would lower what the cost would be but rent to someone in our community, but that would lower what the cost would be to the larger collective community if we were to decide to keep the house. So that's the question at hand. What I wanted to do is invite people who have been here and have used the care space, if they wanted to share what their experience of the space was. Particularly, there are some people who are on this call who really encouraged me to reconsider letting the space go. So I wanted to be able to let them hear, their voices be heard. And then I would like to be able to, for anybody who's not been here, give you a tour of the house with you understanding that what you feel of the space in a video gives you some sense of what the space is, but not the full sense, because you don't know what it's like until you come and you're tired and you get here and you fall out and you sleep. Like, I've had people who had no intention of spending the night here, and then they're just so rested that they're here overnight. They can't, multiple times that people have just come, or they plan on doing things. There's someone on this call, I won't say who came here with a bunch of plans and then passed out right on my love seat because it was just so peaceful for them. And you know, people being able to wake up and, you know, hear the birds and to sit out on the porch and be with nature. And it's such a great space to be able to have inside of a city like Philadelphia that's got so much hustle bustle and a lot of violence and a lot of just, you know, the things of the city, to be able to catch public transportation and get here, you know, and then be able to walk to the woods, you know, and just have so much peace and then get back to your life. So I wanted to see if there were any people who had any thoughts that they wanted to share. And, you know, and then from there to give a tour of the space and then just hear what you all think about the whole concept, about whether or not you think that we should keep the space or whether you think we should close the space. There's some good reasons for both sides of that. And if we were to keep the space, how many people feel that they would want to be a part of the collective that is taking responsibility for this space? Because again, this is not going to be my space if it's kept. It will be a collective community space. And so, you know, I don't want to be having the responsibility alone of keeping the space for the community. I want it to be co-owned if we decided to keep it. So that said, I wanted to open the floor if anybody particularly who's been here and has made use of the space has any thoughts that they would like to share about the value of the space. Okay, so I see, and I'm going to invite you please to just, if I see you, Dada G, so I see Dada G, and then I see Medusa raise their hand, and then after that, if anybody can just type stack, I'll keep track of the chat so that I can keep, you know, people's you know, keep people in order. But go ahead, Dada G, we'll start with you.
Bismillah. Peace and greetings to everyone on the call, and a special shout out to my mama D. But anyway, what I think that you created there is something so special, and I've been there myself, and it's just so warm and so great and so loving there. You know, I like the fact that it was a spot that we could come together and meet and discuss community issues. And when I came, that was what we did. And I just think that the idea of it is so perfect. And I even like the idea of a few in the different parts of the city, because I think that we should all have like a safe haven place that we can go to, that we know that people of like minds got your back, no matter what it is. You know that you got somewhere where you can go that if you don't know nothing else, you know that they got your back. Because you never know what may happen, and you never know what's going on, and you know, just the times we live in. So I wanted to say that. And two, I think that space, I don't know what the price is, and I don't know how hard it would be to keep it or none of that. But I think that place would be a great first model for what you're talking about. And I want to give you a special shout out saying that you deserve a special thank you for even doing what you did for so long. So I just want to thank you for that. So that's all I really wanted to say. And the place is just a beautiful place. And she's right, it's just so peaceful. And if you haven't been there, you need to go there, because it's really a nice place. I ate there, I broke bread there, I argued there. I mean, you know, it was a great experience to be there. So I just think that, you know, I think that we should try to keep it. And if we can't keep it, create another space like that, because I think it was a beautiful space. So that's really all I have to say at this point.
Thanks, Dada G. I see Medusa, and part of what I want to also just, from an ideological perspective, want to just also ask people to keep in mind is the piece around, I mean, I know that when most of us are renting and when we pay our rent, we're paying our rent to, you know, to these landowners who are capitalists and all of that. And maybe that's not super avoidable instantly or whatever, but just also keeping in mind that reality of like, that we're putting these funds out. So like, if I fundraise to cover the cost of this house, I'm fundraising to give these funds out of our community to someone else. And, you know, what occurred to me is it was over $30,000 to have this house for the year. In 3 years, I could have had $100,000 towards us having our own property. So that was the other side that was beginning to trouble me. And I just wanted to just not to argue against what you were saying at all, Dr. G. That's also a part of what I feel, but just as far as the whole picture, wanted to just kind of like paint that picture too. The cost of the house is $2,700 a month. And if I was to rent the one room out, and I actually have a couple people who are interested in that room, if I was to rent that room out, I would rent it out at $800. And so the balance of that would be $1,900 a month. That would be the cost of keeping this house. Plus the utilities that would be there. So Medusa's next. I'm sorry, Dr. G, did you want to say something to that?
Just on that point, and it's going to be real short. If we could raise $30,000 to put up for a house for rent for 1 year, that $30,000 can go towards ownership of a house.
Exactly.
Like that. So I'm not at all. So I would rather be a part of raising the $30,000 for a house that we will own rather than $30,000 for a house that we will only have for 1 year.
Right. Okay. And that's a big part of what the question is, because you know, exactly that. We would have to be raising pretty much twice as much money if we kept this house and tried to raise the funds to secure another house, you know, and then how long would it take for us to get the funds up here, especially if we were doing the double dipping? So that's exactly what the question is. So go ahead, Medusa.
Definitely as someone who's lived in the space, been in the space, had events at the space, brought people in from out of town to the space. I definitely love the space. I love the access to the woods. I love just being able to Shaka Zulu some shit, you know what I mean, in the middle of a space that we were traditionally kept out of. We see that there's different types of interests in the space. It's like what they call a servants' quarter, you know what I'm saying? Like just to know that, you know, just 50 years ago, we would have been servants in that space. So it does feel good to be able to, like I said, Shaka Zulu the space, but I agree with Dada G in terms of, like, if we're gonna raise $30,000, we're better off to grab a space ourselves and to to make it and to have the same ideology around it. And maybe even if we're able to raise 30,000, then maybe pockets of people can raise, you know, sets of 30,000 and buy homes in different areas of Philadelphia, so that no one of the comrades who come into town or whatever, or become houseless or whatever, have to really, you know, they know that there's somewhere to go. And so I agree with finding our own space, but I do think the space is amazing. It's awesome. You curated a really awesome space. It's reflective of Black folks, and it feels good to be there. And so I would be sad to see it go, but I also I feel like that's astronomical to ask for a year. That's it.
So next on stack is Mama Afia. I want to mention that because one of the rooms would be rented, the cost for the year wouldn't legitimately be 30,000 that we would have to raise. It would be 23,000, but that's still a lot of money. But, you know, just in transparency and, you know, clarity, it would be 23,000 for the year after the person was paying that, you know, will be paying rent. Mama Afia? You're muted. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you. I want to join in expressing my appreciation for your having taken the lead on creating the space in the first place. For those of you who don't know me, I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and we have the Malcolm X Center for Human Rights and Self-Determination and WMXP Community Radio. And at 75, I am in the process of attempting to create a similar kind of space here in South Carolina. We're 2.5 hours south of Charlotte, 2.5 hours north of Atlanta. And I appreciate the space and having been able to use it under emergency circumstances, to be able to come into town, set up a meeting, meet with people, and to proceed from there with a specific agenda. I'm of the same opinion as those who are committed to ownership as opposed to leasing. And my question is whether or not there has been any such discussion with the owners, number one, and number two, what are the possibilities of finding another space, even if it were a space that had to be renovated and repaired? And yeah.
So as it relates to the first question, the people who own this property own, from what I understand, like 100 of these kinds of properties in this part of the city, which is in Chestnut Hill, which is the most affluent, or one of the most affluent parts of the city. They have the properties. I don't think that they're interested in selling them, and and the way that they've interacted with me does not make me feel that they would be interested in trying to be any kind of partners. So I think that if we were going to look into getting something, we would probably find a property other than theirs. It's also not necessarily easy to find like a fixer-upper in this area of the city, again, because it's such an affluent part of the city, that most of the properties here are able to be well cared for. The people here usually have more resources. So if we were going to get a property, we would probably be getting it at market value. And I also should say that my thinking is, if we were going to keep this space, we would only keep it until like next year, April, and that would be the time period that we would be trying to raise the funds to get another place. But we could also close the space. The only reason that it's a conflict, in my opinion, is just because for however long it takes us to get the next space, there's no space like this here, right? It's not, we can't just bounce right to the next thing. But that can be fine. That can be okay. So like the fixer-upper thing, I've looked into, like, maybe there's a place where there's some land and it could be, something could be done a little bit, another kind of approach could be done, maybe tiny houses that would put together really nicely and with the same kind of energy and vibe. We could be creative about how we approached it. But if we were going to get something in this area that provides what this area provides, as far as something that's different than what most of us have access to, that puts us so close to nature in the way that this does, and all of that, it would probably have to be a commercial sale. The chances of even like a share sale purchase or something like that is pretty low in this area. And so that's the reality of where we are, right here. Does anybody else have, I'm going to read some of the chats. So Russ says it's 27K plus utilities. I kind of included the utilities in the amount. I added a little bit on. It's 23 plus utility. I mean, including utilities. It would be a 23 about including utilities. I see Wen is on stack. Wen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, hi. Well, I did want to say, use the space. It was really fantastic. A little different. Went with Swan. We live in a lot of nature. For us, it was actually really exciting to see the walkable parts of Philadelphia that are really nice, that we'd almost like to see more of. But the space was so fantastic. We didn't even go out as much as we originally planned, because it really was super relaxing and fantastic. I, you know, for what it's worth, I actually kind of agree with the sentiment that I don't think you should probably shut it down right away, because I think in a way it's better to have the space be open while you're working towards the next space and not leave the gap. But I don't know. I think there's, you know, I know we're working on trying to figure out how to do some of the other pieces of a thing like what you're doing, of like setting up a building as a cooperative that fits a similar kind of space. And I know that like what you're doing, we'd love to do in our space too. And you're working on figuring all that stuff out. And I think that like running the space out of where you're at, you know, everyone has to make compromises under capitalism or whatever. So I don't know, that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Gwen. Pam, I see Mama Pam is on stack.
Yeah, for everyone. I had the great fortune of spending several days at the space, and it was at a really traumatic time in my life, and I just needed to be able to get away to, and I needed certain kind of people around, and they gave me the space to be able to think, and then be able to bounce off what it was that I was feeling with other folks. There's a lot of services that was provided there. When like Yane had access to psychiatry, she had access to yoga people, and but the house, and being able to sit out on the porch in peace. And what I like about the house too is that it had two entrances, two entrances, two exits. The first floor, the kitchen, you can come in from the outside and come right on into the kitchen, which is a nice sitting area to have breakfast and to be able to talk and make plans there. The next room is the room where Yane office, I think you called it, but it was everybody's office, everybody's room. And then it's the huge living room that we had meetings was held in the kitchen and the I'm talking about the meetings was held all over the house, and you always felt comfortable. Birthday parties, Yane threw me my 75th birthday party there at the house. And several other people had, parties there. But the meetings to be able to come together and conflict resolution, there as well. The second floor was where I stayed at in the care, a nice, huge room, and it was connected to the bathroom. And over you had your private entrance to go in. You also had with the care space, upstairs enclosed porch and all, which gave you pretty sunlight. You could hear the birds singing first thing in the morning. You can hear life all the time around there. I really enjoyed the space. And if it can be kept until April, while what I'm asking is the space paid for up until between that is the that we're raising.
You're starting to break up a little bit, Pam. You said, is the space? And I couldn't hear after that.
Is the space paid for up until April, or and if it is, are we raising money and looking for another space? And of course, like we can fix up and near area and all this that have a wooded area, a nice park area, sort of similar to what's happening there.
So the space, so I'm in the process. I'm about to enter a negotiation with the landlords to either terminate the lease immediately, or to keep the lease until it ends, which it would end in April. And so, and I've been slow walking my conversations with the landlord because I wanted to be able to have this conversation so I know what I want to be saying when I enter the conversation or enter the room with the landlord. And so if we were to keep the space, I would expect that, and my hope would be that we would be working hard to raise funds so that if when April came around and the lease was ending, which would be actually end of March, and the lease was ending, that we could move from here to the next space. That would be what I would hope would be the goal of, of what we would be doing if we kept the space. Other side of that is if we didn't keep the space, it would be closed hopefully only from now or like the end of June until the end of March. So those would be with the two potential realities would be, unless somebody, introduces a third one that maybe I haven't thought of and it hasn't come up yet.
Okay, I have questions, but they can wait. And another thing I want to say, the space is beautiful, but what Yane and Medusa and all the people that came provided an all loving experience of the people in the house. And I think that's what also made it special. And Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, who does the work on Momia's Medical and also with Miles Siddiqui organization. He stayed. There was another space where people came out of town and who was visiting Momia, and he had several meetings, some everywhere. And just the access to, oh, great, here's another thing. The convenience of transportation. And I was always driven up there, and then one day, and he kept saying right around the corner is the train. Take the train, and next thing you know, you're into Center City. You can take the train and be in access to just about anywhere. And also, that's what I found was a plus too, as well, was the transportation.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Russ is on stack.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly that a couple of things that intersect, and I know some of you may be familiar, I think Pam may be familiar with the Life Center Association, or the LCA, which is a collective of houses that initially got started by some revolutionaries and some comrades in West Philadelphia purchasing a house back in the day when there was a revolutionary rewriting of the Constitution in Philadelphia. And out of that came leftover a house. But from that one house, they built to the point to where they have 9 houses now. And basically those houses are meant to be for low income folks is the concept. And I've lived in one on 50th and Cedar before, but they have them spread all out through University City and West Philly towards 52nd Street. I say all of that to say that 2 things. One is this is not just for me. I'm just speaking for myself and my envisions of what I see. This is not just a conversation about the revolutionary care space as we knew it, but it's going to evolve for me into a conversation about our future in housing and how we live collectively, so forth and so on, specifically in the context of we have access to a property from the brother Netfa in Washington, D.C., right off of Lancaster Avenue. It doesn't provide all of the wooded area and things like that, but I think in reference to curation and also energy, Pam talked about people in the housing and stuff like that. I think we can go anywhere and create a certain energy. Yes, it would be better to be near that wooded area, which ties into also Wynn, who you guys saw speak, who is a comrade of mine, who has a fabulous piece of property further north, which we are doing work on, which I would like to tie the Elder Ngaze in, which she was speaking earlier about her property, is that we're on the foresight piece of thinking about underground railroad properties that connect to the Appalachian Trail. And so even though Yane wasn't intentionally in that conversation, she just had a property that was on the Appalachian Trail, the Revolutionary Care Space. So one of my concepts is to have revolutionary care spaces, but have them strategically placed. And if they can't be strategically placed, have them donated, like the space on Lancaster Avenue and 54th is donated by Brother Netfa, and it needs work. It's ready right now. His mother donated it, and she would like it to go to women coming out of prison. But I'm sure if we offered the revolutionary care space with an option for sisters to come also and live in that space, maybe as a dual option, that space is a space that's ready to go right now. And me, Quan, and my crew are working on it slowly but surely in the time that we do have. But if there's a constructive effort also for us to, just like with the LCA, we need to have a revolutionary ideological program for people who are passing away, who are revolutionaries, who have property, who have no family and people to give it to, which I know people are already in this situation, but we are prepared as the movement to have an organization body set up professionally that they could trust and know that their property will go into the future in a proper kind of way. I'll end there.
I appreciate that. And I think that's the spirit also, even with Mama Afia has expressed that she has an interest in, even, people who have family, but wanting their spaces to, be able to go to the larger movement community and not only, not only people who maybe don't have anybody who they could leave it to, but even people who may still making the decision that they'd rather leave it to, the larger movement. And so definitely think that I appreciate that. And I think, I have some thoughts, but I want to just open the floor for others who may have some things that they want to say as well. If there's anyone else. And I know a few people have joined the call, and what we're doing right now is we're talking about the space that we've built this revolutionary care space concept in, and whether or not we keep this property in open and continue to pay, these resources from our community out in order to keep this property open for the community, or whether we close this space and continue to build the project beyond it. And, and the last thing that Russ was saying there that I think is really key is that's why I think of this right now. And I say the revolutionary care space as a concept, maybe I should say it as an organization, but to build it as a cooperative that can actually take in properties and build up, have multiple space that can hold these multiple spaces that are owned by the collective community and curated for the collective community. Whether we have this house or not, this house is no longer the point, is the concept, right? And so wanted to appreciate that. And I see Jasmine is on set.
Hey, what's up? Hey, y'all, I'm Jasmine, pronoun she, her. And I've been thinking about coming to come visit the house because every time I talk to Yane about it, it sounds so dope. And hearing you guys talk about just how amazing, how open and how freeing the space is, how it just feels like a liberated space. It feels, I really liked the idea of Shaka Zulu in the space, overtaking a space that traditionally would not even be open to people that look like us, not even 100 years ago, right? I really think that's so beautiful, Yane. I really think that that I like both ideas. I like the idea of maintaining the space and the idea of looking for a space that we can have proper ownership over and not continue to funnel our money into capitalist hands. And I say that as somebody who pays a lot of money in rent myself, right, to people who, you know, are not really a part of the community, people who are going to, you know, not really give back the money like in the places where we want to put our money typically, right? So I think that it would be pretty good if we were to have a transparent goal where we say, hey, we're fundraising to not only just maintain the space for the time being, but also to in the next, you know, year or two to try to solidify a down payment for a space that we can pursue ownership over in order to have for the future. And I think that if we were to write up like an ask, you know, some type of an announcement to ask for donations, I think that if we're transparent about that goal, I think that a lot of people will understand the need to maintain a space currently and also to pursue other means, other spaces. So yeah, so I pretty much agree with a lot of the other voices that were shared, and I'm happy to hopefully see the space soon.
So I'm giving a tour. Thank you, Jasmine. I'm giving a tour of the space for people who haven't seen it. This room is a staging room for my housemate who's moving out of the space in about 2 weeks. But this is also the room that would be rented out to lower the cost of the rent of the house if we were to keep it. This is what has been the care space that people have come and stayed in the past, and this is the sun porch that was a part of that space. So I'm just kind of giving the tour but if anybody has any thoughts, hey, do you mind if I show? You can just show, I won't show the whole. This is that other room that would be a part of the care space. Didn't show you. Nice fireplace right there. And I'll continue to the third floor. I also am packing. Like I said, I'm going to be moving no matter what we do. And so my room is a little, it looks like I've been packing. So, but I'm just going to show y'all what the space provides. There's this sunroof above the stairwell. And then this is, right now it's a sitting room, but this room would be, I would imagine if this room was kept, that it would be, if the house was kept, that room would be a room that would be free rent for someone who could help to manage the space. And there, you know, there's a couple of bathrooms, and then this is what has been my bedroom, which would also become. So this room, there would be 3 rooms that I would think of would be rooms that could be, people would be able to stay in if we kept the space. One room that would be rented and one room that would be for a caretaker. Are there any other thoughts? Okay, Kara, and I see it's getting close to 8, so I want to hear the last thoughts and then just kind of like give people an opportunity to, in the chat, just say what their conclusions are for what they think we should, how they think we should move, having heard everyone's comments. So please go ahead, Kara.
I'm Kara, she, her. This is really interesting. I guess what keeps going through my mind, I live not that far away, and in these really rich, privileged areas, it feels like people are so pissy about zoning and who stays in your home and who lives there. I had some neighbors who were really weird when I rented out rooms, and I'm just sort of curious. I'm getting the impression I haven't had that kind of problem, but aside from affordability in these kind of areas near the woods is also that problem of people just being so protective about how the property gets used and who gets to come and all that.
Yeah, I haven't really had any of that kind of problem from neighbors. The only problems that I've really had have been from the landlords. Is an interesting thing that in this particular little alcove or conclave that actually the people who own the house across the street were public defenders. They worked on people in our community's cases, including, you know, Member for Move, you know, their cases in the past. There are people at the, other end of the block also who have, who know members of our community. There are people who are on this block that actually know people who could have been on this call. And so I
That's
haven't
cool.
had that particular problem right here. This may just, I don't know, it's like a little, I don't know, serendipitous kind of synchronicity in that regard.
That's great.
Any other thoughts before we get to just kind of like a conclusion around and what I think that I would do, and I hope that people would be willing to do with me after coming onto this meeting and being able to think about it a little longer. I'd like to hear what people think. Like people can put something in the chat, and I'll give options, and we can put a thing in the chat, and then I'd like to follow that up with like a poll that I can send out around the community to see what people's thoughts are, and what I would like for people to do if they're thinking about this is to think about it like you're also being invited to become part of a cooperative that is called the Revolutionary Care Space, that is not about the building, even if right now we're talking about the building, but it's about the larger concept. And then as a cooperative, that we will collectively take responsibility for the decisions that we make now and for what we build it towards in the future. And also to keep in mind that we do want to always be in as good ideological alignment as possible in making whatever decisions that we're making. I know to the point that Wynn made that it's not, and to the point that Jasmine made, like we're paying rent, right? Like we're, there's a lot of things that prevent us from being able to, like within the context of this capitalist environment, to just always be only about that. But I want us to always be keeping the ideological and principle-based aspect of this in mind as well. And what I'm wanting to ask people in the chat to answer is basically just as an initial at the end of the conversation kind of question. Do you think that we should, I feel like there's no question that we should seek to get our own property to build something of this nature for our community. So the question is, while we're doing that, keep this space, and it's basically as Gwen suggested, keep the space open, and as Wynn suggested, keep the space open and available for people to be able to use and have access to until the end of March, while we also work to raise money, which would increase the amount of funds that we would have to raise in order to get into that position of, of owning and having our own space that we're building? Or do we go ahead and close this space so that we're not putting those resources out? And, even though it takes away for that time period, the opportunity that this space provides, so that we can own something and do it for ourselves in the long run. So keep it or close it is the question. So if people could just put that in the chat, and then, I'll follow up, like I said, with an email. And the space is being paid for monthly right now. So it's not paid for past today. So there would be the ongoing paying of the rent. If it was paid for already, then I wouldn't even have to ask that question, actually, I guess, because I probably wouldn't be able to get the money back. But the question is, so we would be having to pay rent every month, and and deal with that every month if we kept the space. So the question is, do we keep it until, so it's just keep it or close it? So keep it and while we raise the money, or close it until we raise the money for our own space. So people could put that into the chat, your thoughts, and then I'll save that and keep it in mind, and have that until I send out the poll. But I'll have that information to help guide what I think we'll be doing. And I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone's time Can you all put it in the chat? Nobody's putting anything in the chat. I got one chat in there so far.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
This thing is taking me everywhere.
So what I have right now is 4 people who say keep it. And then I have a couple people, I see 5 people who say keep it, 6 people who say keep it.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
My vote, which doesn't mean that much, it's not that I wouldn't say keep it. It would be enough people to put the money up to keep it while we doing the other thing. So keep in mind, when you say keep it, that means that you yourself also gonna have to try to come out your pocket on a regular basis to be able to keep it and work towards the money that it's gonna cost for us to own our own thing, along with pay your own bills and stuff like that. So that's very important to understand, you know. So when we make it, you know, that's something to think about, not just keeping it. Of course, I would say keep it flat out, but we would have to look at how we're going to raise the money to be able to keep it on a monthly basis, along with the monies to work our own property. So that's something to think about also.
Right, I appreciate that. So I saw Pam, okay, so I want to read in the chat. Somebody asked about rent to own options. I don't think that the people who own this property are interested in anything along those, will be interested in anything along those lines. We may be, you know.
They don't even want that kind of people in there.
Right. And then someone also was asking, could we put pressure on the owners? I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. I can't say yes or no about that. That will be something we would be having to talk about as a community if we were going to think about something like that. James says we should discuss DAO as a structure. And so I was wondering, James, if you could speak to what that is, DAO, and, you know, and what you mean. And I just want to say to Jasmine, read Jasmine's point, that and Jasmine is one of the people who said that we should keep it. And she's also saying that she agrees with Dada G. We need people to pledge funds for current rent, a separate fundraising goal from the future space. Okay, and then Swan saying we could fundraise for rent sponsors to pledge for current rent, same thing. So that's, and I see Pam. So I want to, James, before you jump in, I wanted to give Pam an opportunity to say what she wanted to say. And then I wanted to ask you, James, if you could explain what you were meaning when you say DAO options. But Pam, I see your hand is up.
Right. So is it saying that the month of June, we got to raise $2,300 for the rent for that month now?
So the way I would think about this is that we would need to raise the funds to cover the year. And there are funds that I can access if we were deciding that we were going to do that in order to, you know, for June. The funds for June would be available. But, you know, I would want to be able to replace those funds. So James, would you be able to could you please speak to what you were talking about in the chat?
Sure. Good evening. I didn't want to. I would prefer to talk about it offline, only because I didn't want to take over the call. But I will try to give my best 30-second summary as possible. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. Bitcoin, blockchains, all those things are examples of DAOs, DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations. What they've evolved into is a newer business structure that allows for people to collectively participate in economics. And you use the blockchain as your official ledger to really kind of vote through and to collaborate through. And so you would create, it's a way of really kind of creating a tech company that would allow you to do collective economics. That's the super short version of it. I like to use the phrase common culture, and it's really about doing business with people that you have common goals with. Like you guys, we could get together and we could decide we're going to raise money to put flowers down Broad Street. Like, you know, and like we vote on the blockchain, we say how many flowers and everybody votes. And, you know, we you know, it really has created a very new structure. I think many more Black people need to take advantage of it. There's actually even a lot of grants and available for DAOs. And it's a really good way of just doing business. But like I said, I didn't want to take over this call, but I'm happy to discuss it with you at length.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, James. I did want to say that one of the things that I was hoping to do and intending to do, and whether we keep the building or not, is to establish a board essentially of caretakers who would take the primary responsibility for implementing our collective decisions that we would all also be supporting. So, you know, that's something that I want to do no matter what we end up deciding.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Dadaji.
Maybe not a board of caretakers, but maybe a board for this group, for that group, and then in that one of the responsibilities of that board for the group is the caretaking of the house, because we may decide that we might not even have the house, but we do need a board to further this this situation, whether we keep the house or not.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even say caretakers, because caretakers is just the term that I used instead of board members, because it's the Revolutionary Care Space, but it just really means board members.
Okay,
So I shouldn't have said it that because it's not clear, but you know, I just didn't like the term board. It sounds so like, you know, stale and corporate. So, but I wanted to establish a board for the concept, again, whether we have the house or we don't have the house, you know, for moving our collective decision forward, and also for like getting this established officially as a cooperative, and you know, doing that paperwork process, and you know, and then you know, just that whole process of like, you know, having some additional responsibilities that to the membership of getting what the membership has collectively decided done. Yeah. So just wanted to mention that that's structurally like one of the next steps that I have in mind, either way. So I see in the chat that most people are saying that that we should keep it. So, all right, so I see Russ put in here, keep it if we have the money now, don't keep it if we don't know where the fundraising is coming from or how. And then Dadaji says, I say that the only way we keep it is if we have enough people to pledge to raise 2 months rent every month. Which, you know, that makes sense to me. What do you think? There's somebody here. Okay, so who said keep it? So I guess, you know, the primary, I'm not, is there anybody who does not have the ability to say what they think we should do in the chat, and who thinks explicitly who thinks we should not keep it? Because I'm not really getting many people who are saying to not keep this space, but I want to make sure I'm making room for that as well. And I definitely don't want anyone to feel like unpopular. I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody here should be feeling that way, but you know, I definitely just want to make sure that there's room, space for all people to convey what their thoughts are. So are there any people who are feeling like, you know, differently than that?
I was just wondering if we had like a projected plan of the use of the space throughout like the winter, so that we can, understand or like fundraise, like how we going to utilize the space if we was to choose to keep it or continue fundraising it for it, like projective like year plan or 6 months, 3-month plan. And then I also was wondering if if possible, like what is up with the back taxes on there? Like is everything up current date on that, John? And then
It's current. I'm pretty confident it's current. I mean, these people are super rich. They own hundreds of properties that cost $500,000 around the city.
Yeah, this
Like,
not the kind of this not the kind of place we can get from them.
yeah, we're not gonna get it from a sheriff's sale or
Right.
from.
It's not that kind of place. This is for rich people. This place here was built for rich people. And if you see the place, you can tell that we are not supposed to be in there. It's for very wealthy people. And the area is for very wealthy people. And that's not that kind of space.
I just want to shout out Anye because I've been there, like eating crabs on the porch, like the Hillen, the tranquil, like it was just amazing just walking through that space. And it's something that we deserve that, right? Like we shouldn't be pushed in the far corners of our city and not have access to the the nature and everything that Wissahickon has to have. So like I got a little fight in me, honestly. But realistically, I was wondering also, is there like, I know PHA is, talking about a lot in, certain houses and things like that, and that nature, like, is that a possible aspect that we can go at to see if we can get like, in the long term, some of the houses that they are leaving dilapidated in our community? Something like that, is that an option?
I mean, I think those are things that we could be discussing as a membership, kind of like, just like what Russ was talking about other properties. I still would say that the likelihood of any of those kinds of properties being in this part of the city are 0 to none, like really low. But, there certainly are other kinds of things that could be done if that was something that we decided collectively we wanted to be focusing on. I think, we would that would be, another kind of conversation for us as a organizing, member body down the line. I wanted to answer Keisha's question, which is, let me see the question here. Would the next space be in nature? So that also would be something that we would be thinking about collectively. I personally feel that the nature relationship is one of the important parts of this space. I feel that the ability to walk outside, be on the porch and surrounded by trees, to be able to walk out with barefoot and do grounding, to look at the trees, to look out the windows and be able to see nothing but trees, and to be able to walk within 5 minutes and be in the woods are really key parts of what makes me have a hard time letting the space go and taking it away from the community. So I personally think that the nature is really important part of the space. I think it's a very key part of the space personally, and when thinking about healing, and also because we are a people of nature and we've been separated from the planet through the socialization, and that needs to also be healed. And so that's my own personal opinion as one person. And I do see myself as when we're transitioning this as one voice of many voices. And so that's just my own personal opinion about it. And we would be collectively deciding, and I can be outvoted, and I will go with our consensus priorities, the priorities that we decide on as a collective. So that's just my opinion, that I'm offering because of the fact that I created this space. And, I thank you, Ananka, for your comment of agreement. Any other thoughts and questions around that, the idea? Because, so it sounds like even though we understand that if we get this space, that we would be giving funds to this entity, this system in this way, that if we have the ability financially without burdening me personally, as the person whose name this lease is under, to keep the space until we're able to get the next one, that would be the preference. And people here would be willing to be a part of helping with finding and identifying the resources to do. I have some ideas for also finding some resources, but I agree with Santi that we would not want to do this long term. We would want to do this with a commitment to to establishing our own ownership of the fund of a space. But that's what I feel like I'm hearing at this moment. I do still want to follow up with some sort of poll so that with this recording being available to people, so that people who are not able to be here, who may have some other thoughts and insights, would be able to share some of those. But that seems to be where the consensus lies. Is there anyone who would think that that's not what is coming out in this call, or that I'm missing something? I just want to be sure. It's kind of like a big decision in my opinion. So
Yeah, Yane, for me, I know I definitely need to give it some thought. So I definitely can't make a commitment in this moment and need to give it more thought. So I just want to make sure I sit on my end.
Thanks, Raphael. Is there anybody who hasn't said anything, who has some words that they want to say? I want to try to see if we can finish up and wrap up in the next 10 minutes. Then we would be finished at 8:30 Eastern. Is there anyone in particularly anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to say anything, who has some thoughts that they would like to share? And then, of course, if somebody who has spoken has something they really want to say, you're welcome to. But is there anyone who?
Hey, peace, Yane.
Peace. Is that Kimba?
Yeah, indeed. I had text you. I was in a meeting for most of this meeting, so somebody's going to catch me up on everything that was talked about. So that's why I haven't given any input and so forth. I don't have the whole context of the meeting, but I will be filled in, and I'll give you some feedback. But if you plan a recap too, I'm here. I'm listening in, trying to just catch up.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Kimba. Anyone else have any thoughts about how, that you want to share before we close?
I was wondering maybe if we can put a poll out just for people that's still undecided or might got follow-up questions. And maybe we can just do a poll about it, and maybe have some type of standing on the next meeting and what direction to go or questions to answer.
Definitely want to put out some sort of a poll or that enables people to, definitely want to do that as a follow-up, but still wanted to get a feel for what people were thinking now. But even what anybody said now can change. People's minds can change. This is not some kind of official decision or commitment or anything. I'm just trying to get some feedback. It's just the way that I feel about it is I was explaining this to someone yesterday, I go to the supermarket and there's some items that I get at Whole Foods or, whatever, when it was Fresh Fields, and then suddenly it's not available anymore. They just decided not to sell it, and now I can't get this item. And I was I got used to it and it was taken away from me. I feel like I created this and I made it a community space, and I don't feel right, especially with the feedback that I was getting, autonomously deciding to take it away from the community once I created it and made it for the community. And so that's why I really just needed to get some feedback, because I was getting a lot of feedback from people who were seeming to want me to consider doing this in a different way. And so that's the reason why I wanted to have this meeting and just hear from other people, what your thoughts were about it.
And I think not the last, but the most important question is, are you okay? Right? How can we help you with your transition, or how are you feeling with that, or ways that we can support you in a way that you are continuously trying to support us or is supporting us in the community. So I just want to know how you feel about it, and where you're at with it, and if any way that we can support you right away in this transition, because it sounds like you already made your mind up, but I want to make sure that in your transition that you feel supported.
I appreciate that, T. I think, that, I do love this space, and I feel very much ready to move forward in life. I feel excited about what's next for myself. And, I'm really comfortable doing whatever the community wants done. It was very hard for me when I realized, like, I'm giving these cats all this money. You know, that was a hard kind of, when I was renting rooms out, it didn't feel the same way as, you know, as I started to think about expanding the space and pulling out, you know, and pulling these funds in order to be able to do this for the community. Which again makes me need the community to say, yeah, we think it's worth it, even in spite of the fact that it's being done in this way and these funds are going in this direction. But I feel fine. I'll throw out that something I say all the time is that my computer is dead and I need another computer. But you know, that it's definitely affecting my life. But mostly everything is great. I appreciate the care. I'm kind of trying to balance being honest and like not centering myself in a conversation that's really not about me. But you know, I feel very healthy. I feel very happy. I appreciate the ask, you know, and you know, if we are able to do what we're aiming to do and build the way that I'm seeking to build, then we're all going to be good, and that'll include me. So I appreciate that too. If we do close the house, I will need people who will, like, I've got a lot of African statues and art around, and I would need people who would be able to be stewards and hold those things until we have the next space, so that they can have that, so that with the space, those things can come back into the next space. So some of that, and just kind of getting the space emptied out, because if we decide to close the space, I want to close it by the end of June. And so, you know, that would be something that I would need, you know, I could use some support with, especially because I'm going to be out of town for 2 weeks in support of Baba Kamal Siddiqui. And so I would only have 2 weeks after that to get the space closed, you know, in that time frame. So that would be something that could be helpful. I see Ananka, your hand is up, and then after Ananka, Dadaji.
Peace, thank you. I just I wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me to be on the call. And you know, what you're doing here is so, I think, immensely powerful. I want to do whatever I can to support the work that you're doing and hopefully see it grow. I know, like, the you know, being attached to the space, but I feel like things will continue to open up and support what you're doing if we can just kind of stay motivated. But, you know, just the whole concept around well-being in this work, I think, is so revolutionary in itself, because I've seen so many people burn out and break down, and people end up homeless. Since I work, you know, the work I do, from not having spaces like this. So, you know, I just don't want to lose sight of just how powerful it is, this whole concept of what you're doing, and how much I do really appreciate the sacrifices that you've made doing this. So whatever, you know, just wrapping it up, whatever I can do to help support, I want to commit myself to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ananka. Appreciate it. And I look forward to you coming down here. Maybe let's talk later on and see what we can figure out.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Ananka. I think that the work that you do, Ananka, around getting people into housing can overlap into this work. So let's have those conversations. And I talked to JR, and I'm excited for you guys to come over to the East Coast. And the sooner you guys get there, the better. But those intersections need to happen, because you have experience in housing, and it doesn't have to stay in Chicago. We need that experience in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing.
Awesome. Dadaji, I know that you had, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it was just as a side note that I do have a event space here in West Philly. And if we need a space to have any type of meetings or anything towards fundraising or whatever, I'm offering my event space to be able to do that.
Nice, thank you.
So that's just to put that out there so everybody knows.
All right, awesome.
And that's it.
All right, so in these last couple of minutes, is there like anybody else who wants to say one last thing? Essence asked, what is your event space called, Dadaji?
Excuse me?
Essence on the call asked, what is your event space called?
Oh, well, I haven't really had a set name for it. But I have a few names that I'm trying to choose. So you could call it 216 event space, but that's the address, 216 South 52nd Street. So I don't really have a name for it yet. So I'm working on that. But I do have the space, which is more important.
All right. All right. Well, I just want to say that I appreciate everyone taking the time to be on this call. I appreciate that, you know, we were on this call for 90 minutes and that you took your time out to have this conversation with me and to appreciate the vision and to contribute to it. And for people who have, you know, any level of commitment to that also want to appreciate that as well, because it certainly is not something, no matter in the house, out the house, whatever's next, you know, it's not something that I can do by myself. We have to do this together. And so, you know, I just want to appreciate that and want to respect everyone's time. So I don't want to hold people any longer. I'm going to, if you can, there's revolutionarycarespace.com. I'm going to make that available. I'm going to text you all and I'll put a poll on there. And if you could go there and complete the poll, just know that it's not going to be a complete website because I need people to give me testimonials about having stayed here and I have none yet. So I have all these placeholder videos. Once I get some testimonials, I'll be able to actually have the space, the website be free, but it's got a password now and I'll give everybody that password. So thank you all again. It's 8:31, so I want to go ahead and let us all go. Once again, just want to appreciate you all, and I'll say free them all and free the land. Peace.
Free 'em all.
Free them all.
Free 'em all.
Free 'em all.
Free 'em all.